The DC Universe has had more reboots than Batman's origin story. And let's be honest, half of them crash harder than Kryptonian spaceship in Smallville. And now, after the DCU's legacy of weight, was that canon? Moments. James Gunn's here to clean up the mess with the subtlety of a chainsaw-wielding peacemaker. His first offering? Superman, a film that made $551 million, while critics argue whether it was sincerely corny or cornily sincere, a debate usually reserved for Tinder bios and political slogans. But hey, at least it's not another multiverse reset. Oh wait, Peacemaker Season 2 is literally about alternate dimensions. Classic Gunn, fixing continuity errors by making them a plot point. This is the DCU's fresh start, except he's keeping his favorite toys, Peacemaker, punching fascists is always in style, and Blue Beetle, because apparently, someone at Warner Brothers really loved that movie, while tossing the rest into the WB vault next to Batgirl and Henry Cavill's gym receipts. Will it thrive? Maybe. Will it be chaotic? Absolutely. After all, this is the man who turned a talking raccoon into an Oscar nominee. Strapping folks. This universe's survival hinges on whether audiences still care after Superman's third act twist, where the real villain was corporate mediation all along. James Gunn's DCU isn't just a reboot, it's a hard pivot from the DCEU's messy legacy. While Zack Snyder's universe was defined by its brooding tone and rushed team-ups, Gunn is taking a different approach. Structure flexibility. Instead of forcing every movie into the same grimdark mold, the DCU is embracing a Star Wars-style model where each project has its own identity, whether that's Superman's hopeful idealism or Peacemaker's violent, R-rated absurdity, while still tying into a larger narrative. The key difference? The DCU isn't afraid to cherry-pick. Gunn isn't wiping the slate entirely clean. Peacemaker and Blue Beetle are sticking around, but they're being retrofitted into new continuity. Peacemaker Season 2 will likely ignore its DCEU cameos, and Blue Beetle's standalone origin story means it can slide into the DCU without much fuss. It's a smart move. Why throw away what works just for the sake of a clean break? Gunn's Superman sets the template. A world where superheroes already exist, skipping the usual origin story fatigue. Instead of another Krypton explosion, we jump into a metropolis where Superman is established. Lex Luthor is already scheming, and heroes like Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl are active. It's a risky approach. Some critics argue it's too much too soon, but it pays off by making the DCU feel lived in, not just a checklist of setups for future crossovers. People keep saying these characters needed a backstory, but this works just fine. It's not their movie, and this makes you want to see more of them in their individual movies, which would likely have Superman pop out from time to time. Also, in cartoons, we get random characters popping up without explanation, and no one was complaining then. The biggest question mark is how Gunn will handle the DCEU leftovers. Peacemaker's continuity is already messy, and Blue Beetle was never fully tied to the old universe anyway. But if anyone can make it work, it's Gunn. He's already proven he can juggle tone, continuity, and fan expectations without collapsing under the weight of it all. Bottom line, the DCU isn't just a reboot. It's a course correction, one that's learning from the DCEU's mistakes instead of pretending they never happened. And so far, it's working. Let's talk about Superman, because apparently, Warner Brothers needed 3 tries to remember what makes him work. The DCEU gave us Henry Cavill's Superman, a walking god who brooded more than a teenager locked in their room listening to rock music. Snyder's take wasn't bad. It was just allergic to joy. Remember Man of Steel? Great action. But by the end, Superman was snapping necks and leveling Metropolis like it was a Call of Duty map. And Batman v Superman? Right, the movie where Superman's big emotional climax was saying his mom's name. Kill Martha! Inspiring. As someone who watched a movie with a fried brain the first time, I was like, who the fuck is Martha? Why did you say that name? Now, enter David Cornsweat Superman, Gunn's attempt to actually, like the character. This version isn't some untouchable deity. He's a guy who bleeds, stumbles, and gasps, smiles once in a while. Gunn's Superman isn't defined by how many buildings he can punch through. He's defined by whether he gets back up after getting hit. It's almost like someone read a comic book and realized, hey, maybe people connect with heroes who feel human. Wild concept. To be fair, one thing that the DCEU got right is most of casting. Henry as Superman, Affleck also killed it as Batman, no pun intended. Jason's Aquaman, Harley Quinn, Rick Flag, Jeremy Irons' Alfred, Shazam. This guy knows how to play a man-child so well, Peacemaker, and even Gal Gadot had her moments. Overall, they had some of the best lineups. Tone-wise, the difference is night and day. The DCEU treated Superman like a Christ allegory, which sure, works if you're into slow-motion shots of him floating in space like a lost astronaut. The DCU, meanwhile, leans into the classic Daily Planet energy. Clark Kent is a dorky reporter, Lois Lane is more than just a damsel, and Lex Luthor as an actual threat instead of a weirdly sweaty tech bro. And yes, there's humor, not just quips, but warmth, something the DCU often forgot in its rush to be serious cinema. Will this version finally stick? Hard to say. DC has a habit of course-correcting straight into a new disaster. But for the first time in years, it actually feels like someone gets Superman. Not everyone's thrilled about Gunn's DCU, because when has anything in comics ever pleased everyone? Some critics have already sharpened their knives, recycling the same tired complaints with a fresh coat of outrage before the movie came out. Let's unpack a few. First up, the Superman looks weak, because apparently a hero isn't allowed to struggle unless he's moping about it for 3 movies straight. Newsflash, vulnerability isn't weakness. Comics have shown Superman beaten down countless times. Doomsday, Darkseid, Wonder Woman, even street-level thugs with kryptonite. But his strength was always in standing back up. If critics want an indestructible god, maybe they should stick to video game cutscenes. Then there's a Gunn erase Snyder's vision crowd. Look, the DCEU wasn't some flawless masterpiece. It was a mixed bag of brilliant ideas and baffling choices, and pretending otherwise is pure nostalgia goggles. Gunn isn't erasing anything. He's just moving forward. And let's be real, if Snyder's vision was truly the only way, Justice League wouldn't have needed 2 versions to halfway work. And finally, the classic "this is just copying Marvel" take. Because Marvel invented humor, optimism, and coherent storytelling, right? Never mind that DC Comics pioneered the balance of light and dark. Superman has been hopeful since 1938, and Swamp Thing was body horror before Venom was a twinkle in Sony's eye. Gunn's approach isn't Marvel-lite. It's just DC again, after years of forgetting what that meant. Overall, this is what you see when you go into the movie theater, ready to hate the movie. Critics love a good backlash narrative, but the truth is simpler. The DCU isn't perfect, but it's finally trying, and after the last decade, that's a win. Even with Gunn at the helm, the DCU isn't completely out of the woods yet. There are still some lingering questions and potential stumbling blocks that could trip up this fresh start if they're not handled carefully. The DCEU burned a lot of goodwill with its rushed team-ups and constant reboots. And while Gunn's Superman has been well-received, not everyone is ready to dive back into yet another DC universe. Yes, it made money, but not the big buck most people expected. I mean, Snyder fans are giggling now like Gotham's villains, not wanting to accept that their precious Snyderverse is the reason for this shit. Marvel's recent struggles prove that superhero fatigue is real, and Gunn will need to keep proving that the DCU isn't just more the same. That means avoiding the trap of overstuffing movies with setup for future projects, something the DCEU is notoriously guilty of. And there are still people who can't seem to move on from the past. Love it or hate it, the Snyderverse still has a vocal fan base, and some of them aren't thrilled about Gunn's reboot. If the DCU stumbles out the gate, those voices will only get louder, and Warner Brothers has a history of panicking when fans get loud. Gunn has a clout to stick to his vision, for now, but studio interference is always a risk in superhero cinema. So, did James Gunn actually save the DC universe? Well, let's not throw a parade just yet. This is still Warner Brothers we're talking about, a studio that could somehow turn The Flash into a farewell tour for a Batman nobody asked to say goodbye to. But for the first time in a long time, it actually feels like DC has a plan. Not just a corporate-mandated, boardroom-approved, let's copy Marvel plan, but a vision that understands what makes these characters work. Gunn's DCU isn't perfect, but it's something the DCEU rarely was. Fun. Not quippy, factory-assembled fun, but the kind of fun that comes from actually liking superheroes instead of treating them like burdens. And if that means we finally get a Superman who doesn't look like he's constantly debating whether saving people is worth the effort, or farming, then hey, maybe there's hope for DC after all. One thing I love about Gunn is that he is finally giving these comics book characters a chance to be themselves. Superman feels like that guy that would run up to hug Batman. And from that little conversation in Peacemaker, apparently this Batman wouldn't kill, And with Matt Reeves out there making his Batman universe, there might be a little pushback and confusion. But since Matt's universe is more grounded, Gunn's Batman could be more fantastical like the Arkham games. But that's for another video. While DC is out here taking swings, Marvel's too busy drowning in multiverses and forgettable Disney Plus shows. Speaking of which, if you want to hear why nobody's watching Marvel anymore, click right here. Or don't, I'm not your boss. Either way, let us know in the comments. Is Gunn's DCU the fresh start we needed? Or are we all just setting ourselves up for disappointment again? Bye, fellas. And remember not to be like Grad here. Go get a job if you don't have one.